Hey there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I am Eric Johansson, a teacher and tutor with LSAT Demon. With me is Nathan Fox, co-founder of LSATdemon.com and the weekly podcast Thinking LSAT. Some backstory: Anonymous had prometric proctoring issues on the February test, which resulted in an apology and a refund from LSAC, but having to forego the February test as a result. Anonymous is now realizing that they're probably not applying this spring, that they're going to have to delay until the fall. So that's where we're at.
Anonymous says, anyways, I took the exam in April and felt so nervous about prometric crashing that was all I thought about the first section, which was my worst section. I flopped. My score was a 146, which is lower than my diagnostic score. During my practice tests, I was scoring in the 160s. Test anxiety is ruining everything for me, as I was thinking about what could go wrong, and then random thoughts about other things going on in my life started to pop in as my mind wandered. I don't know how to erase a bad LSAT experience from my brain? ? Thank you for reading, Anonymous. Sorry you had a prometric glitch. You're not the first one. That has happened to tons of other people. Tons of other people have been able to overcome it. I have a hypothesis, though. Sounds like Anonymous was trying to take the exam in the spring and then force an application in late in the cycle.
Yep.
So sounds like Anonymous was putting all the pressure on just one exam.
Yep.
When you put all the pressure on one exam, you don't have that pressure on your practice tests. So you do well on your practice tests. Then you put all this pressure on one official test because you're trying to rush your applications, and then you flop.
Mm-hmm.
I think you need to get back on the horse. I think you need to do a bunch of practice tests. You need to treat your practice tests like they're the official test. Take them seriously. And then you need to treat the official test like it's your practice tests, which means take it seriously, but not so seriously. You might want to look into we have some anxiety resources at LSATdemon.com. We've taught classes about test anxiety before. We have resources about things like meditation, exercise, whatever. There are mental health things that you might want to do to reduce your anxiety overall. But I think what students do mostly is a thing that I've never done, which is just I've never taken it so damn seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been kind of like, okay, this is an opportunity to show off what I know. I know what I know. And I'm not afraid if I have a bad day, then I had a bad day and I'll take it again.
Mm-hmm.
So, especially worrying about prometric, that's a concern that if you're rushing, if you're trying to apply right now, then that matters.
Yeah.
But if you're not rushing, if you're like, hey, I'm taking the LSAT as up to 5 official times. I might have to take this thing 5 times to get one of these practice test scores on my official scores.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take that first or second or third official test with this mindset that I've got a backup and I've got a backup to my backup, then things like worrying about what happens if prometric crashes
Mm-hmm.
that's a non-factor, because you did have a prometric crash in February and they apologized and they refunded you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's not going to count as one of your 5 attempts. It didn't cost you any money. It was a pain in the ass. You didn't get a score, and that's a bummer. But it's not something to worry about, because it's just not going to be on your official record. It's just like a free, it's like a false start in a race.
Yeah. So I'm glad you said that, because I'll tell you what I tell my students about anxiety over tech issues on the test, which is, well, let me ask you, are you a football fan?
A little
You
sometimes.
watch. Okay. Well, all right. You're the quarterback. Take the
Yep.
snap. You have seen that a defender has come across the line early. Flag
Ooh.
flies.
Oh, yeah, free play.
Free play.
Yeah.
I think you got to think about proctor issues on the LSAT the same way. If anything goes wrong with your proctor on an official test,
Totally.
it's that defensive lineman who went too early, flag went up. Now you've just got a free opportunity to check
like
it
throw a
downfield.
Risky pass.
Yeah.
It doesn't like that's clearly that is definitely offsides. Wait, what is it on the false start?
False
No,
start,
false start's
I think.
offense. No, offsides. must be defense.
Offsides. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely offsides, and it's just like, oh, okay. So then now, no matter what I do, it's gonna be all I'm gonna get at. It's like if I score a touchdown, I can decline the penalty.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a great analogy.
But that's only helpful if you know that you're just gonna get another try later anyways. So that's just doubling down on what you said earlier, Nathan, which is you have to believe and you have to know that this is just one attempt. There will be more attempts. You can't put everything on this one test. And that's that's it.
Worst advice anybody ever gave, and we see this a lot in especially we see this advice in diversity pipeline programs. Unfortunately, they're so well-meaning, but they try to force people onto a particular timeline for law school. And when you force people onto a particular timeline for law school, then you end up with people in the situation that Anonymous is in, where it's like, well, but I already did my personal statement and I have my letters of recommendation, and I'm applying right now because I'm starting law school this fall because that's what I committed to in advance. And our advice would always be the exact opposite of that. Do a bunch of practice tests, plan on taking the LSAT at least twice and up to 5 times if necessary. Don't even think about applying until you already have your best LSAT on record. So all these people who run some of these outreach programs, pipeline programs, when you have people start working on their personal statement on day 1, or when you have them pick out a test date and an application date on day 1, it's, as an LSAT professional, I'm here to tell you that you're just setting them up for disaster on the official LSAT. And instead, you should be just telling them, okay, you're interested in this? Fantastic. Let's explore law careers. Absolutely. Let's think about what kind of lawyer you might want to be. Let's start our networking. Let's start our LSAT prep. But whether you apply this fall or next fall or the fall after that, law school is always going to be there. And the worst thing you could possibly do from an LSAT perspective is to do what Anonymous did, which is to put all your eggs in the basket of one particular cycle. And then you just end up with wasted attempts, bad experiences on the LSAT. And, now Anonymous is having nightmares about their one bad test.
Yeah.
I don't know. Any advice before we wrap it up? Any advice? Like, what do you think Anonymous can do from here?
The most important thing is what we've already talked about, which is not restricting yourself to a set timeline. As long as you've got yourself on a timeline of, I only have 1 or 2 test attempts so that I have to, because I'm going to apply this fall.
Yep.
That's always going to bring anxiety.
Yep.
It's always you're going to put way too much pressure on yourself to get it done on this test attempt. And you're throwing yourself at the mercy of stuff like proctoring issues, technical issues. If you can just recognize that in the long term, and you're going to have a long legal career, in the long term, applying this cycle, next cycle, 2 cycles from now, doesn't matter.
Yeah, compared to a 30 or 40-year legal career, it just doesn't matter at all. So people need to slow way down.
Yeah, it's just, I remember, and this was, I remember my experience of deciding to put off my applications. And it was a tough decision to make at the time. But the moment I did it, and the moment I really accepted, oh, you know what? I'm giving myself more time. It was like this load off my shoulders. And and the test really just opened up from that point, because it wasn't about, I need to get this score right now. It's, no, let me just have fun with this test.
Yeah.
So I think that's what you got to get back to, Anonymous.
Let me add one more thing, which is I
Yeah.
think that a little bit of gratitude can go a long way. I read recently that you can't be sad or anxious if you're feeling grateful. Like you can't have those two
Hmm.
emotions in your mind at the same time.
Hmm.
And so, just maybe recognize, Anonymous, how unbelievably fortunate you are to be a college graduate or soon to be college graduate at least, who apparently had a diagnostic LSAT of higher than a 146. So you have a diagnostic in the high 140s or maybe even into the 150s. Those types of people, eh, there's nothing stopping you from scoring in the 170s. And you're among the wealthiest and healthiest people ever to live on the face of the earth. Like you are one of the wealthiest, most fortunate people on earth today,
Mm-hmm.
and even more so compared to all of human history. You are incredibly lucky to live in the world you live in. And so I don't know, like a gratitude journal or something like that, but just remember how lucky it is that you're not breaking your back in agricultural labor or in a coal mine somewhere, and instead you're sitting in a plush chair in a climate controlled environment working on some LSAT questions.
Yeah.
Like the biggest possible LSAT disaster, you are still way more fortunate than the vast majority of all humans who have ever lived. So I don't know, maybe just for me, if I think about my grandparents, it's like, oh man, compare my life to their life. My little anxieties and depressions are just nothing compared to having a fifth grade education and working in the fields and trying to feed your family.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's got those ancestors if you go back a few generations. So Anonymous, I don't know, maybe a little bit of that kind of perspective as you do your practice tests and on the official day of the test. Like when the test starts, burn 15 seconds and think about how grateful you are to just be sitting there taking the test. Remember that there is no fail here.
Totally.
Hope that helps.
Thanks, Anonymous. Email daily@lsatdemon.com if you'd like to ask us a question or share some LSAT or law school admissions news. Thanks for listening.